watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture. Funding for Shalom TV has been provided by the following. And by viewers like you.
Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and in the early 1970s, when I had my first professional broadcasting position, I was privileged to be the editorial director and director of public affairs for WMCA Radio here in New York City, which was then the leading telephone talk station in the country as telephone talk was becoming more and more popular on radio. And as editorial director, I had the chance to cover a young, dynamic congressman who had already been elected to serve the Upper East Side of New York. He ultimately served 4 terms in the Congress. 5, excuse me, thank you. 5 terms in the Congress. And for me, it was a kick to watch him, to learn from him, and he then became one of my political heroes. He was a dynamic, exciting, liberally oriented, and very open and direct congressman, so that very often while politicians were dancing around issues, this politician just went to the heart of it. And for me as an editorial writer and as a friend of R. Peter Strauss, who was the president of the station, one of the things we enjoyed doing most was publicizing the very good work that this congressman was doing. He then became mayor of New York City and served, I want to make sure I get this right, 3 terms.
Correct.
As mayor of New York. And he may be, with maybe the possible exception or in the company of Fiorello LaGuardia, the most popular person to ever grace Gracie Mansion. I'm talking, of course, about one of the esteemed now political columnists, political thinkers, and statesmen on the American scene today, Ed Koch. It is so wonderful to be once again in your presence, and again it's an honor for me to say to you how much you influenced me as a young individual and how much I've respected everything you've done. So thank you for giving me some time.
Very generous in your description. Thank you.
Thank you. So many people know you, many people care about you. I want to ask one general question. We want to know how your health is. How are you doing?
Well, I'm 87 years old, and I've had my share of major problems. I've had a heart attack and a stroke and quadruple bypass and prostate, but I've recovered from every one of them.
That's
and
wonderful.
I come to the office every day, and I'm here from 8 o'clock until 4 o'clock, and I have a radio show and a television show. I'm a partner in this law firm, Brian Cave. I do movie reviews, so I'm quite busy, and I write books, and what I enjoy most is writing, and I do a weekly commentary, political commentary, so I'm having a good time.
You have not really slowed down hardly at all, have you?
Well, I believe that I will die at this desk. That's my intention. I do not intend to retire unless my mental faculties make it difficult or impossible, or my physical being. But I hope that I'll be able to continue until I die.
Well, I hope it's 120.
No, that's too long.
You never know.
All right.
Anyway, you do the best you can. We're thrilled for you. Now, as an active individual who makes quite an impression on the political scene, there are some issues that the Jewish community is especially interested in as it relates to some of the positions you've taken. You have had a very interesting relationship with the President of the United States.
I have.
And I believe, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, there's been an arc to it. And one of the things that has been true about you is you have not been reticent to change positions as you believe time and circumstance warrants.
Absolutely correct.
One of the things that you made news about was when you supported a Republican, Bob Turner.
Right. Well, let me tell you how I got there.
In the special election against David Warburton, and
Yeah.
the Republican won in the 9th Congressional District.
Hugely. He had an
Huge.
8%
Okay.
margin victory.
In a district that Anthony Weiner had vacated.
And
which
was
had
Democratic
been
for
a century.
Right.
Almost a century Democratic. You supported the Republican. First of all, you shocked everyone.
Yeah.
But you did it for a reason.
Yeah.
Now you tell me the story.
Okay, well, firstly, we have to go back.
Yes.
I supported President Obama when he ran and won and became president. And before he won, he asked me to go to Florida and speak to the Jewish communities on his behalf, which I did. And I was overjoyed that he won. I was not overjoyed by his first foreign policy action, which was to convey to the Muslim world that he wanted to change the direction of the United States and make it more friendly to the Muslim world. And he made that statement in Cairo. And
that bothered you?
Well, it didn't bother me that he made it in Cairo. His statement bothered me somewhat. It bothered me that he didn't then have, as is usual in those circumstances, a visit to Israel, which as president he has never visited to date. And I believed his position vis-a-vis the Muslim world and terrorism, etc., was different than mine. I mean, the White House eliminated from its vocabulary the word Islamist terrorists. And what else are they? But in any event, my commentaries made that very clear, that I believed he was pursuing a course of action that was harmful to Israel, and he raised the issue of Israel stopping construction in East Jerusalem and on the West Bank in order to have negotiations. Other presidents had said that the construction was an impediment, but they had never demanded that Israel stop construction, which President Obama did. And I criticized that. And then he had Vice President Joe Biden make a very denunciatory statement of the Israeli government, and have the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton do the same. And then when Prime Minister Netanyahu came to the United States and addressed the Congress, very well received, he also invited the Prime Minister, President Obama did, to the White House, where he was very rude to him, barred any photographers, which is not customary to do, left the Prime Minister to go to a dinner at the White House that he didn't invite the Prime Minister to. And I marked all of these things and said what in effect the President was doing was throwing Israel under the bus. And then came this special election as a result of Anthony Weiner having resigned for childish behavior. Rather sad. And the special election meant that there were only 2 congressional elections in the whole United States. One was here in the Brooklyn, Queens 9th District, and the other was in Nevada. And I said to myself, we could turn that election into a referendum on the president and his position vis-a-vis Israel, particularly because that district had a very large Jewish constituency, about 30% were Jewish, and that would mean about 40% of the actual voters, because the Jews tend to vote in large numbers. And I announced that, and I immediately got 2 calls. One from the Republican candidate, Bob Turner, who said, "I'm your man." I said, "Come on up." And I said, when he came up here, there are 2 messages to be sent here. One is by me to President Obama, that you cannot take the Jewish vote for granted. And the second message has to be by you to the Republican national leadership, that you must not destroy Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and that they must remain as government programs and not be privatized. He said, "I agree with that." And he was, of course, very supportive on Israel, and had been over the years. He's Roman Catholic, very charming man. I'd never met him before. And then I got a call from David Weprin, and he said, "Why are you doing this?" And I know David Weprin.
And David is a Jew. David is Jewish.
Yeah, he's an Orthodox Jew.
Right.
And he said, "I could be the message." I said, "You can't be the message, David. This is much bigger than you or me. It is a message to the president. You don't send a message by electing another Democrat to show that you can't take the Jewish vote for granted." And of course, that didn't satisfy him, nor should it have. And then I campaigned for Bob Turner, and he won.
Big.
Amazingly. I was delighted, particularly because the New York Times had denounced me for doing this in a special editorial. And then when we won, it made it even sweeter, so to speak. And okay, now, aside from being involved in that, I received an invitation from the White House to attend a special event in honor of the UN to be held at the 42nd Street Library.
After the election was over?
This was
right.
I actually received the invitation during the election.
Okay.
Had nothing to do with it. It was just a matter of course.
I see.
I received those invitations before. I had gone when Reagan had invited me, and I hadn't gone since. And I thought, well, I'd like to go back, and because I know many of the UN delegates. And so I accepted it. So a day before the event occurred, I got a call, and it was from the chief of staff of the president, Bill Bill Daley, who is the brother of the former mayor of Chicago. And I...
what did he want from you?
Well, he said, "I know you're coming tomorrow night. Would you like to meet with the president?" I said, "Sure, why not? Of course." So he said, "Come a half hour early." So I came a half hour early, and they put me in a room with the chief of staff and another political person who I knew, Patrick Gaspard, who had sent me to Florida to work on behalf of the president when he first ran. In comes the president.
Is this the first time you've met him personally?
No, I actually met him. I spoke with him on the phone twice in my lifetime, and I met him once when he engaged in a debate before the election with John McCain at the Alfred E. Smith dinner. We shook hands. And
okay, but this is a one-on-one with you.
oh, yeah.
Right.
The president launched into a 20-minute statement in which he said he didn't understand why the Jews were upset with him. He was very supportive of Israel.
He did not understand why.
He did not understand why. He said he's been very supportive, and he went into a litany of things that he thought he had
And was
done.
it your sense, Mayor Koch, that he believed what he was saying?
Oh yes, I think he was absolutely
I do
sincere.
too. Okay.
Absolutely sincere.
Okay. From
And
his perspective, he considers himself to be pro-Israel.
a great friend of Israel.
Okay.
And he spoke for 20 minutes, and then he said, "Your turn." And I spoke for 10 minutes. And I said, "Mr. President, I wouldn't have been so upset with you if when you had made the demand of Israel that it accept the pre-67 lines, which I don't agree with because they're not defensible borders. But I would not have been upset if you at the same time had said, Hamas, you have to give up before Israel sits down with you. You have to give up terror. You have to give up your charter that says that every Jew that came to Palestine after 1917 must be expelled. If you had done that, I wouldn't have done what I did." He said, "Didn't I?" I said, "No, you didn't." Well, in any event, he said, "I need you." He said, "Your voice is heard outside of New York." And we shook hands, and he said, "Let's stay in touch." I went home and I thought about it. And I also commended him for the magnificent speech that he had given at the UN that very day in support of Israel and against
It was a wonderful speech.
It was an extraordinary speech. Okay. And then I thought about all the things that he had said, and I said to myself, I'm going to get back on his bus for re-election.
He had convinced you of something. What did he convince you
It
of?
wasn't a question of convincing. It is, he convinced me, let me use your words. He convinced me that he believed he was a friend of Israel's. And I must say, the Defense Secretary of Israel has made it clear that he, Ehud Barak, believes that he's been one of the best presidents as it relates to support of Israel. And in an interview on Charlie Rose, which I saw, he went on to give all the things that had been done by him, by the president. So I have no regrets about that. And as I have, I got a lot of mail saying, "How could you do this? You were right not to support him. How could you support him?" I said, listen, if you criticize somebody and he decides to accept your criticism and to convey he wants to do what you're doing, am I supposed to still continue the battle? And then I got a call from Abe Foxman of the ADL, who said, "I agree with what you and what you're doing." And he said, I had a similar experience when L'Oreal, a women's cosmetic firm, wouldn't do business in Israel. And I called for a boycott, and then they surrendered and said, "We're going to open stores, we're going to do everything you want," and so forth. And I said, "All right, I'm calling the boycott off." And I got calls saying, "How could you call the boycott off? You got to punish them." He said, "They now want to do what we want, and you still want to punish them? It's ridiculous. Why should anybody ever change? If you make a demand, they agree, and then you continue the fight. It's ridiculous." So that was my feeling.
I want to express to you what Jews say to me, Jews in positions of leadership say to me, and I want your comment.
Yeah.
There are many people who argue that if you look at the actions of the American administration under President Obama, it has been extraordinarily, in terms of actions, pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Enormous financial support, even more military support. And there's a question as to whether the sanctions against Iran were strong enough or not. But that the problem is one of tone. That there is, as somebody just said to me, we don't feel that the president puts his arms around Israel in the same warm and fuzzy way that some of the prior presidents have done.
Name him, George Bush. Yeah, he was magnificent.
Okay, and the issue is, and I'm asking you now as somebody who has served in Congress, in government, you talk, and you bring a sophistication none of us have.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, to what extent is it critical that not only are the actions reflect support of Israel, how important is it in your mind that the president's message or the tone be what Jews want it to be?
Well, it would be helpful, but it's not critical.
It's not
Actions
critical.
are critical. And he performed superbly at the UN by preventing the application of the Palestinians for statehood
Yes.
to be accepted at the Security Council. It was a great fight that was orchestrated by him and which the United States won.
Is he anti-Israel?
I don't think so.
Is he anti-Semitic?
Oh, definitely not.
Okay. Is he pro-Muslim?
There's no question in my mind that he would be more accepting of a relationship than, let's say, his predecessor. That doesn't make him evil.
Is he pro-Palestinian Authority?
I think he wants, and so do I, a resolution. He is for a two-state resolution. I am
As
for
you
a
are, of
two-state
course.
resolution, as is Bibi Netanyahu.
As is the vast majority of American
Of
Jews
Israeli
world
and
Jews.
American
Of course,
Jews.
Of
Yeah.
course. Does he understand what you tried to tell him about the extent to which there are charters at the moment in the Palestinian world, the Hamas charter, and some say even the Palestinian charter has not yet been changed enough, but does he understand the extent to which the Hamas charter is something that is so enraging to the Jews?
Well, I've never had an extended discussion on that.
What's your sense, though?
My sense is he's very supportive of the Jewish state. He wants a two-state solution that will provide a separate state for the Palestinians. And I'm in accord with what I believe is his ultimate intention. Now, he has done things that I've disagreed with. I've told you what they are. That doesn't mean he's a bad man, and doesn't mean he's necessarily wrong.
The Palestinians say that if there's a two-state solution, no Jews will be allowed to live on what is now known as the West Bank in this new Palestinian state.
That's an outrage.
Should the American administration say it's an outrage?
Sure, it should.
Why doesn't it?
I don't know. I don't know.
No,
that-
you do know.
Firstly,
You must know.
No. Firstly, I've never heard the statement that no Jew will be able to live on the West Bank. Now, you've heard it apparently, and
Abbas has said
I wish
in a
you
new
would-
Palestinian state there will be no Jews allowed in. Even, by the way, no Jew may be allowed to serve in any NATO force stationed within the West Bank to protect borders. It's an extraordinary statement.
I don't think that's a terrible statement.
It is.
And I don't believe that a NATO force, if it decides to serve in that capacity, will accept it. But I wish you would send me the statements, because I have never seen them.
Okay, fair enough. What is your own feeling about the legality or illegality of Israeli settlements?
Well, there's no question that they're legal.
They are legal.
Absolutely. And in my judgment, they are. And I don't believe that the United States policy of the State Department has, in fact, declared them to be illegal. I think that what the prior presidents have said is that they are an impediment. And of course, you can say there are lots of things that are impediments. There are impediments that the Palestinians don't go to the peace table. That's the biggest impediment of all. But I don't think they're illegal. Why should the West Bank be Judenrein? Nobody is suggesting that Israel be Muslim Rhine. There are 1,200,000 Palestinian Muslims who live and have Israeli citizenship. Now, when the West Bank is and its lines are determined, and I'm assuming that the 300,000 Jews now living on the West Bank will be incorporated into the Israeli state, but there are Jews that are not part of that operation who will be left on the West Bank, and they should have a choice of being resident aliens. They should have a choice of becoming Palestinian citizens, or they should have a choice of going back to Israel. But how can the Palestinian state live in peace side by side with an Israeli state if they say no Jews can live here? That's ridiculous. In fact, I believe that the ultimate goal should be an economic union involving Israel, the Palestinian state, and Jordan. It would be a very powerful economic union.
What about the building of Jewish homes in Jerusalem, especially East Jerusalem? Do you have a feeling about that one way or the other?
Of course I have a feeling about that. I believe that people in Jerusalem should have the right, if they use the money that is either given to them or their own money, to buy property. They have a right to buy property. Jews have a right to buy property from Arabs. And it's an outrage that there are people supportive of the Palestinian cause who say, Jews are buying property in the city of David, which lies outside the walls of the old city. Well, they lived there in the time of David. Can't they live there now? I don't think that their land should be expropriated or condemned for Jews to live in. But if Jews want to buy, should there be a law that says Arabs who are Muslim cannot sell their property to a Jew? It's ridiculous.
And the government can also build housing in East Jerusalem.
So, yes, I would not support their condemning
I understand.
Private property, but they if property that belongs to the state, and there's lots of property, just as it belonged to Jordan when Jordan was the occupier, so to speak, after a war of East Jerusalem.
From 48 to 67.
Yeah.
I want to tell you what people argue, and you respond.
Sure.
People who even agree that there's nothing illegal here say it isn't wise, because ultimately what Israel should be showing to the Palestinian community is an understanding that there will be a certain percentage of the land and a certain specific parts of the land which will be ceded to a new Palestinian state.
Okay.
And in those areas,
Yeah.
you don't want to continue to build a Jewish presence.
I don't agree with that.
That's the argument.
I don't agree with that. As I understand it, the maximum land of the West Bank that would become part of the Jewish state is about 7%. Some say it's as low as 3%, but I've also seen the figure 7% to encompass this 300,000.
Especially those near Jerusalem.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Okay.
near the old 67
All
line.
right. So I don't think I mean, it seems to me that's is not a bad solution, particularly when the 7% of the West Bank that is taken to keep these Jews part of the state of Israel will be compensated by land of equal value in coming out of Israel proper. Now, you know, the ideal situation would be what Greece and Turkey did, which was exchange land and exchange populations for people who wanted to go. I mean, I wouldn't make anybody go.
Mm-hmm.
But if they wanted to go, that's what Greece and Turkey did many years ago. In part, that's what India and Pakistan did, although India still has I think the second largest Muslim population of any state in the world. So I think the two states, if the leadership wanted to, and I believe the Israeli leadership does want it. Mm-hmm. I don't believe the Arab leadership wants it. I believe the Arab to have two states. I believe the Arab leadership, not just Hamas, which believes it owns Tel Aviv, but also Abu Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, I believe they think that ultimately, if they do nothing, there'll be a single state, because you cannot have Israel occupying the West Bank and not allowing the people on that area to become citizens with voting rights, etc., which would destroy Israel, because it would ultimately then become an Arab state because of the demographics. And I believe that's the ultimate goal of the Palestinians. But nevertheless, maybe world pressures and so forth, and if they realize that they cannot win, and that it has to be negotiated, cannot win by threats and terrorism and war, maybe they will ultimately negotiate. I hope so.
I want you to answer another question for me. I want to hear how you would answer.
Yeah.
Another question that is heard often now on college campuses. Why should there be a state for the Jews when Jews are a religion? And is that an appropriate thing for modern America to support?
I'll explain firstly the narrative. The Jews have always been there. They've been there for 3,000 years. Nobody disputes that except the Palestinians, who say they never were there and that the temples were never built by the Jews. I mean, it's insane, their position on that. But put that aside. Jews are not simply a religion. They are a nationality. If you're under Jewish law, religious law, if you're born of a Jewish mother, you are a Jew. But you can grow up and be a Christian. You can grow up and convert to any religion that you want, or accept no religion. So there are, or you can become a Jew by converting and becoming a Jew. It is more like Armenians. With the Armenians, you have one church, basically, the Armenian church. But if you don't belong to that church, you're still an Armenian. And I think that is the closest that I could come to as it relates to Jews. So it is factually incorrect to say that it is only a religion. Yes, most Jews would say, my religion, if asked, is Jewish. But most Jews don't even go regularly to synagogue.
That's correct.
Like me, I'm secular. I believe in God. I believe in the hereafter. I believe in reward and punishment. I hope I'll be rewarded. And I go to the synagogue twice a year.
Okay. Mayor Koch, why has every single administration refused to move the capital, the embassy, the American embassy, to Israel's
I think it's
capital,
stupid,
Jerusalem?
particularly because the American embassy is located in West Jerusalem, which is not in any way part of the division that might occur as it relates to East Jerusalem. Let me also give you my thought on how you solve the Jerusalem problem. I don't think it's very difficult. I believe that the new state of Palestine will have its capital and share it in the old city of Jerusalem, not just the walled city, but East Jerusalem. That the two capitals will be there: the Jewish capital of Israel, the Palestinian Arab capital of the new Palestinian state. And I believe that the people who live in the city of Jerusalem, the whole city, should have two votes. One vote is to vote in a mayoral election for the whole city, and to have also borough presidents in the various areas of the city of Jerusalem. The Arab areas obviously having Arab borough presidents, and the Arabs will vote for their borough presidents and the mayor. The Jews, or those who are living in Israel, will vote for their borough presidents and the mayor. and then those same people will vote in the national elections of their states. Jews, Israeli, voting in the national Israeli election, and the Palestinians living in the city of Jerusalem voting in the national election for the state of Palestine. That's not hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, I used to say, if I could live with the borough presidents of Brooklyn or the Bronx, who gave me a hard time, whoever the mayor is of Jerusalem can live with an Arab Jewish population.
Boy, I'm going to push you one more time. You
Sure.
said it was stupid, but
Yeah.
you didn't give me a reason. Do you have any sense why America resists moving its capital, the embassy?
I believe, and I've never discussed it with anybody, that they probably think that it will be received as a particularly harmful slap in the face. It won't, in my judgment, and if it does, it's their fault for not understanding that the embassy is intended to be built on ground that will never be
Exactly.
Muslim. It's in West Jerusalem, in the Jewish areas.
The next time you speak to the President of the United States, tell him he should move the embassy.
Actually, I think he should, but I don't think it's key.
Okay. So, lo and behold, you write a fabulous piece that you call My End of Year Lament. And I get to speak to you very shortly after that was published. You, in this, talk about how Tom Friedman, who wrote a column also at the beginning of December, you believe the column, I'm using your word now, unmasks Tom Friedman. And I want to read a very brief piece of this, and then we'll talk about it. You write, Tom Friedman is a fine writer with a high public profile. Because he is Jewish and purports to be a supporter of Israel, you write, he apparently believes that gives him license to constantly criticize the Jewish state and its allies. This week, his attacks were especially outrageous and irresponsible. And then you go through the things that bother you. I want to go through them one by one, if you wouldn't mind.
Please.
Okay. The first one dealt with a question that I would have asked you anyway. In one of the recent Republican presidential debates, as Republicans jockey to see who will be the nominee of their party, the issue was raised with Newt Gingrich, who claimed that the Palestinians are an invented people. And you claim that what Friedman says, based on that, in your words, he's adding this notion that Gingrich said they are not a real nation entitled to be a state. You argue Gingrich never said that.
He didn't.
So I have two questions for you. How in general do you feel about his saying, Gingrich's saying, that Palestinians are an invented people? And then we'll talk about the Friedman piece.
My recollection is that Golda Meir said the same thing.
Yes, she did.
And the fact is that the people, Arab Muslims who were part of the Mandate of Palestine, were considered under the Ottoman Empire as southern Syria.
Absolutely right.
And that's what Gingrich is talking about.
Right.
But it doesn't make any difference. They, since that time, have become a recognized national people.
As a politician, was Gingrich wrong or stupid to say it, even if he were factually correct?
Neither. He was not wrong and he was not stupid. He was making an historical point. And in fact, I watched the debate, and the moderator turned to the two people who were critical of him, Romney and Ron Paul, and said, "Is he factually correct?" And they both said yes.
Then
I happen to believe that the truth is always relevant.
Bowie, that has been a mantra of yours. You have always told the truth.
Yeah.
Politicians sometimes feel that the truth has to not that you shouldn't lie, but that it's not wise to always tell the whole truth.
And you may, and I don't disagree with that, but I don't think that he injured anybody.
Why did he take such heat for saying it?
Well, they're all running for Republican
Yes.
candidate.
They
as
argued
president.
that he did damage to Israel.
Oh,
Do you feel
not.
he did damage to Israel?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
I mean, Newt Gingrich is a huge supporter of Israel. I believe the other candidates, except for Ron Paul. Ron Paul has a history which he now wants to deny by saying that he didn't write it, although it appeared in news publications that he was the editor of anti-black statements, anti-Israel statements, as I understand it, anti-Jew statements. And I always say to people, well, you know, that's 20 years ago, and he's apologized. I said, and I accept that, but what has he done since then to undo the damage? It's not enough to apologize. That's easy. What has he done to undo the damage that he did to African Americans? What has he done to undo the damage that he did to the Jews and Israel? I know of nothing that he's done.
Yes, but just to be fair to you and the argument that we began with,
Yeah.
some people might say the same thing to you about President Obama after he apologized to you.
No, he has done things. And what he has done is one, immediately, his speaking out at the UN,
Exactly right.
which was magnificent,
Right.
his preventing the Palestinian Authority from winning its battle to get 9 votes at the Security Council, and all of the things that Ehud Barak cited, making him the most supportive, according to Ehud Barak, most supportive American president of Israel in terms of arms and other things.
Well said. Okay, so from your perspective, Friedman says that Gingrich is seeking to deny Palestinians their own state.
He didn't say that.
According to Friedman, Gingrich supports evicting the West Bank Palestinians through ethnic cleansing.
He never said that.
And according to Friedman, Gingrich's option is that there should be one state which would overwhelmingly, that Gingrich supports the one-state solution.
He never said that.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned, did Gingrich say anything that upset you in terms of Israel?
No, he's very good on Israel.
By the way, as you watch the entire Republican field,
Yeah.
is there someone you think would be best for Israel and the United States?
They're two different questions.
Yes. Are they? Are they two different questions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
A
they're two
president could
different
be good for Israel and not good for the United States?
A president could be good for Israel and not be adequately able to be the president of the United States. I mean, there are lots of people who support Israel who I would not want to be president of the United States.
And which is more important to you when you vote for a president?
The United States.
And should that be true for American Jews in general?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. The first ingredient in terms of your vote is what's best for the United States. But there's nothing wrong with if you're Italian and you say, but I'm interested in how it will react our country will react to Italy, the country of my forebears, or if you're Polish, or if you're a Mexican American, to have on your mind, how will we as a nation react to the country of my ancestors? That's what the U.S. is all about.
Okay, so I'll ask the question again. Who's the best as you look at the field for Israel? Who's the best for America?
Well, I believe that both Romney and Gingrich, who one of which will be the Republican candidate, are good, both able. I'm not voting for either of them.
Of course.
I am voting for Obama, but they're both able. They are fine Americans, and will do whatever. I mean, they have a philosophy which is not mine, but they will do what they think is in the best interest of America, and they are also both very supportive of Israel.
People are suggesting that Gingrich is somehow scary.
Scary?
Scary. That he is unstable in some way, even would be imperious as a president. As you know him, any truth to this?
Well, I'm not an intimate of Gingrich, and I was shocked by his references to the judiciary, that if the Congress disagreed with a decision, that they would compel the judge to come and testify. I think that's just ridiculous. But listen, everybody makes. My father was involved in one of my elections for Congress. And it happens that in that particular election, which was somewhere in the early 70s during the Vietnam War, and I was very opposed to the Vietnam War, I went to Canada to talk to the draft resistors, American, who had fled there, and also to deserters who had fled the Army, American Army. And I came back and I said that we should give amnesty to the draft resistors and the deserters. And the war is going on at the same time. People said to me, you're going to be defeated. I said, this is an immoral war, and I believe we should encourage our young men to come back to the United States. And my father was asked by a reporter, well, what do you think your son's urging amnesty for American deserters? My father said, everybody's entitled to make a mistake. But it happens that President Carter gave both resistors and deserters 6 months later amnesty by presidential order. So I was just a little ahead of my time, and also I was reelected with a huge vote.
Yes. And how would you answer the issue that now again rages in the Republican debate here on how we would handle illegal immigrants, undocumented
Well, I'm
aliens?
opposed to giving amnesty to illegal immigrants. And you get condemned by the New York Times and other people. Obama's for doing that. George Bush was for doing that amnesty. I am not. I'm not for shipping them back in boxcars. I'm just simply for penalizing employers who violate the existing law and give jobs to illegal immigrants. And if you prosecute them and put them in jail for 6 months, they'll never do it again, nor will other people who learn of the prosecution. That's what I'm for. And in fact, as a result of the recession, 1 million Mexican primarily illegal immigrants went back. And what most people don't know is that the unemployment rate in Mexico is 5.4%. Our unemployment rate fluctuates around 9%. We should be going to Mexico to get jobs.
Does this mean you disagree with the former House Speaker Gingrich's idea that illegal aliens who've been here for 25 years or more should be given some kind of...
He hasn't really fleshed out his idea. I believe we should show the most compassion, that the parents of American children born here should be allowed to stay here if they're illegal. I believe that...
That is a form of amnesty, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I'm just not for a blanket amnesty, which would give 11 million, and maybe as high as 20 million. Nobody knows how many illegals there are. And the other basic issue is we gave amnesty back in 1986 under a congressional law that actually gave citizenship ultimately to 3 million such illegal immigrants. And we said it was the last time. So if we keep giving amnesty every 20 years, why shouldn't people come here illegally? They know they're going to get amnesty.
You've said that you would find, although you're going to vote for Obama, you would find either Gingrich or Romney a suitable candidate.
No,
both in
I didn't
terms-
put it that way. What I said is, I thought the question was,
Who would be good for America and Israel?
right, that's okay. That question is okay. Who would be better? Obama.
Of course. You didn't say Perry, Governor Perry. What's your
Oh
sense
no,
of
I
him?
mean, actually, his name came up when we were talking, the president and I, at that meeting that I discussed. And I said, oh, you don't have to worry about him. Anybody who doesn't believe in evolution will never get a vote from a Jew.
And should the United States build a fence or a border all
What's
along
wrong
all
with
along
the border? What's wrong with a border fence? I don't get it. When isn't a border fence better than a rifle? I think it is. When Israel was putting up the fence, everybody said, no, 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 no fences. Why not? And as a result of Israel putting up fences, terrorism has been near eliminated, not totally.
Virtually eliminated.
Yeah.
Virtually eliminated.
Yeah, and isn't that good? What's wrong with a fence? Fences make good neighbors, is what I used to read in elementary school.
Friedman says that Romney wants the U.S. to serve as Israel's ATM and shut up.
That is so outrageous. I mean, actually, the two statements, and you're going to get to the other one next, I think,
Yes.
that he made that I think border on anti-Semitism, if not anti-Semitism, and I believe they are, be that statement, and the statement that Netanyahu is hugely welcomed by the joint session of Congress and applauded, and with people standing up. Friedman says that was bought.
Bought and paid for by the Israel lobby.
And that's an anti-Semitic statement comparable, in my judgment, to the Protocols of Zion, which was a forgery made in Russian Tsar times to cause pogroms. I don't think Friedman wants pogroms, but he's such a smart guy not to recognize that what he said is hugely anti-Semitic and will embitter even more people who are currently anti-Semitic.
Okay, so I want you to sort of put this now in context. And I could go on for hours, but we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Friedman's not stupid.
No, he's very smart.
Okay. And he is the darling of some of the left.
The darling of the media.
Okay. So why would he write a piece which you find so objectionable? How does this happen to him?
Well, everybody, as my father said, is entitled to make a mistake.
Actually, you'd go into it more in your piece. It's more complicated than simply making a mistake.
Oh, I think it's more complicated. I believe that he now believes his own act, that he is the expert on Israel.
Do you consider him to be a legitimate supporter of the State of Israel?
No,
Because?
because of those very statements.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is so interesting is I read the other day that the New York Times had asked Prime Minister Netanyahu. By the way, I'm not a supporter of Prime Minister Netanyahu. I believe that he should throw Shas out of his cabinet. I believe he should compel every Orthodox Israeli who avoids military service to submit to military service or go to jail. So I'm not a supporter of his, but nevertheless, I'm glad Israel has him at this time because he has the strength required to stand up when there are so many people like Sarkozy and even Cameron and others who have forgotten the Holocaust, who have forgotten how they stood silently by or participated, in the case of France, in the destruction of the Jews. Anti-Semitism is rising in Europe, and you need someone with the strength that Netanyahu has, even though I disagree with him in a number of areas, and I've just indicated some of them.
How would you counsel American Jewry about when it is and when it is not appropriate to go public with criticism of Israel?
There's nothing wrong with criticizing Israel anytime you think it should be criticized. Nothing wrong for people who aren't Jewish to criticize Israel. If, when you criticize them, it is for something you would criticize another country for, that isn't happening in my judgment. What is happening is you make demands on Israel that you don't make demands on other countries. And that is anti-Semitism in my book.
Mayor Ed Koch, it is a joy to speak to you at all times. And you still have the excitement and the dynamism of a 25-year-old. You thrilled me when I watched you when I was a kid. You thrill me to this day. I hope I can always come by and share your wisdom.
Anytime.
You make a marvelous contribution, not only to the Jewish world, but to the United States of America. And you remain a very important voice. Kol tuv v'hatzlacha, all the best to you. Thank you for letting me join you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. And that was our meeting with Mayor Ed Koch, again, one of the major voices on the American Jewish scene. I hope you enjoyed hearing him. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to the things you heard Ed Koch say. I'll pass them along to him. So please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who can send a tax-deductible contribution of $36 or more to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media to help support our programming. Tax-deductible checks may be made out to GEM and mailed to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. Please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD, and we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.